available today. This will allow you to listen to the program in Mandarin, Cantonese. To do this, click on the global at the bottom that says interpretation, interpretation. For the Cantonese, for 廣東話係撳 Spanish， for Mandarins 撳 Chinese， for 國語你要按一下 Chinese. To click on the language that you are interested in. Live captioning is also available for this program. To turn on the caption in Chinese, use the button at the bottom. Thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoy today's program. I am now pleased to introduce our guest, Omar Swala from New York City Campaigns Finance Board, and Wodin Lucia from the Democracy New York City.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Omar Suarez with the New York City Campaign Finance Board. And with me today is my colleague, Rodine. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Rodine Louisier. Thank you so much for the introduction. I am going to share my screen and go, I'll start today's session with a little bit of voter education, what's on the ballot, and just what's going on with our local elections this year. So give me 1 second. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. So first, let me go over a little bit of what and who is Democracy NYC. We're a nonpartisan initiative of New York City focused on increasing voter participation and civic engagement in NYC. And part of our mission is to encourage every New Yorker to make their voice heard. And so this year, with so much stake in the local elections and the implementation of a new voting system, public education is more important than ever this year. And our goal is to register new voters and encourage New Yorkers to make their voice heard. So what's new? So this year, if for those of you that aren't aware or starting last year, if you're 16 and 17 years old, you can now pre-register to vote. So what that means for you and the young people in your lives is that they can fill out the same form, and when they turn 18, they'll automatically be entered into the voting rolls and able to vote. They'll only need to fill out a new form if they're changing their address or name.
你的名字就会被
所以最新嘅消息，新嘅投票及邊個咧可以登？
And also we have voting rights and justice involvement. So as of May 2021, just last week, all New Yorkers who are not in prison for a felony conviction are eligible to vote. So this includes all New Yorkers on parole and probation, and New Yorkers that being released into parole automatically have their voting rights restored. Also, early voting. New Yorkers are able to vote early before every election. So you have 9 days before the election day. That means weekends, mornings, evening hours to go out and vote. So now local elections, what's at stake, who's on the ballot, and what you'll be voting for. So for those of you that don't know or don't realize, all politics are local and affect our daily lives. Local elections have an impact on every part of our life, and local government has a lot of money and influence, and they can decide what the community's priorities are, right? And a lot of times change happens on the local level, like women's rights, minimum wage, environmental protection, and so on. So who's on the ballot and what can they do? So first we have the mayor. The mayor is the leader of city government and can make sure that the city addresses issues that matters to New Yorkers, from jobs, education, housing, and beyond. The mayor is able to establish programs to provide families with childcare and housing, and make sure that they enforce laws on how land should be used, like for businesses or affordable housing or parks. Then we have the public advocate, who is the people's representative in city government, and they are responsible for looking into complaints that you may have about city agencies and services that are happening in the city, like jobs, education, and housing. So they can advocate for things like tenants' rights and minimum wage. Then we have the comptroller, who's the city's chief financial officer, and they set rules for how the city can spend its money. We like to call the comptroller the city's banker, right? They can audit the city's budget and determine fair funding for better programs. Then who's on the ballot? The borough president, which is like the individual mayor for each borough, and the borough president can advocate for their boroughs and make sure that their communities are getting what they need. Same thing, housing, jobs, public safety, and they actually have the power to utilize 5% of the city's budget. That's up to $4 billion. Then we have the city council. So the city council is one of the most local for us, right? The city council is the lawmaking branch of New York City. It's divided into 51 different districts. So you may have a different one than your family member. It's divided up into 51, and there's one member in each district, and they have the right to pass laws to make school buildings safer, set penalties for parking and traffic violations, and conduct oversight over things like the police department. So just some important dates that we want you all to remember. June 22nd, right? June 22nd, New Yorkers will use ranked choice voting in an important citywide primary elections. And the June primaries will impact an outcome of a number of critical races. So some more key dates. We have May 28th, which is the deadline to register to vote in person or postmark a voter registration form. June 15th is the deadline to request an absentee ballot if you would like to vote from home or vote from mail. June 12th to the 20th is the early voting period. Remember, I said you'll have time to go out and vote in the mornings, weekends, and then June 22nd is our primary election day. So just some voter resources that you may need before you go out to the polls and you feel comfortable. Make sure your registration is up to date. A lot of times people move or things change, and we forget to change our voter registration as well. This is also a good way to look up what district you're in, so you know what city council you're gonna be voting in, what race you'll be voting for. Then this is super important. Find out who is on your ballot. We want to make sure you know who's on the ballot, so you know who's running and what their beliefs are and what platform they're running on. You can do this by going to voting.nyc, then clicking on read voter guide, and then meet the candidates and find out who's running in your district. Next, before you go out to the polls, plan how you want to vote, right? If you want to vote early, if you want to request an absentee ballot, or if you would like to vote on election day. You can go to Find My Poll site or request your absentee ballot at nycabsentee.com. And just some things you need to know when you're at the polls. So in any election, you have the right to be helped by anyone of your choice, except for an employer or union representative. If you need an interpreter, the Board of Elections can provide that for you, but call this number, 866-VOTES-NYC, for more information on what availability is like at your poll site, and make sure that there's an interpreter that's there to help you. You can ask election workers as well for assistance. You can vote even if your machine is broken, and you would vote by affidavit ballot too if your name is missing from the list of voters at your poll site. So important things to remember because sometimes these things go wrong. And then really important for my first time voters out there, you do not need ID unless it's your first time and you did not provide a social security or driver's license number on your registration form. So some ID that is acceptable is just a state ID or a utility bill, a government check, something that says you are who you are. And then last, if you cannot or you choose not to show identification, you can still vote by affidavit ballot. So last, before we get into ranked choice voting and what it is, the super important part of the presentation, if you would like to help out and get the word, the Campaign Finance Board and Democracy NYC is doing a lot of things over the next few weeks to make sure everyone gets the information that we're sharing today. So you can go to mobilize.us/Democracy NYC to find out about all of those opportunities and help join us. Thank you all so much. I'll stop sharing and Omar can take it away.
Thank you, Rodine. That was a great presentation. We wanted to start everyone off with just the basic information and an overview of what you need to know as a voter. We have very important elections coming up, and so it is vital that all voters know what they need to be able to cast their vote. So I'm going to switch to a different topic, which is ranked choice voting. This is something that's new for New York City voters. And I'm going to explain a bit more just about it. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss just a brief introduction of myself and the Campaign Finance Board. Then I'm going to explain what ranked choice voting is, some background information on it, and then get into how ranked choice voting works, how to fill out your ballot, and how the votes are counted. Then just give some reasons that you should take advantage of ranked choice voting and use the available options that it's giving you now. And finally, provide some next steps in terms of resources. And then we'll wrap up and take any questions either about voting or ranked choice voting or anything to do with the upcoming elections. So let's get into it. As I mentioned, I am with the the New York City Campaign Finance Board. Sometimes I'll say CFB, that's who I'm talking about. And CFB is a city agency that is independent and nonpartisan. We're not underneath the mayor's office, although we work with the mayor's office, and our primary responsibility is the New York City Matching Funds Program, where voters or donors, small donors, can get a match of 8-to-1 for donations that they make to local candidates. But beyond that, we also have a charter mandate to do voter education, voter outreach, and increase participation in New York City elections. And that also includes educating voters about ranked choice voting. So that's what we're here to talk about today. What is ranked choice voting? I know it's the topic of the day. So let's actually explain what it is. And I'm going to do my best to give a high level overview. And then we can talk a bit about the specifics of how it works and how it affects you as a voter. So ranked choice voting is a new way for voters to elect their representatives. What's different is that now you can rank up to your 5 favorite candidates or your top 5 candidates in order of preference instead of just choosing one. This gives voters more say in who wins, increases civility, and can lead to more diverse candidates winning. These are some of the benefits that we've seen in other jurisdictions that have ranked choice voting. And we think that it can make elections more open in New York City, and New York City voters will appreciate it as well. So we're not the only place. New York City is not the first place to implement ranked choice voting. It is being used in other places. This map here of the United States shows many of the places where ranked choice voting is being implemented or has been implemented. 2 states have passed ranked choice voting at the state level, Alaska and Maine. Some of the larger cities that use ranked choice voting, San Francisco, Minneapolis, Oakland, California, and Santa Fe, New Mexico. And finally, the Academy Awards or the Oscar Awards also uses ranked choice voting. If you were watching the Oscar Awards this week or last week. Where did it come from? Why do we have ranked choice voting in New York City? How did it get here? Back in 2019, the option to have ranked choice voting was put on the ballot for voters to decide. And over 73% of New York City voters voted yes in approval of the ranked choice voting system. I can show you, it was actually approved by voters in all boroughs and in most neighborhoods. Voters were in favor of ranked choice voting. The way that it's going to change our elections now in New York City, beginning this year, is that every time that there's a special election or a primary election for a city office, there will be ranked choice voting. It will not be used in the November general election, only in special elections, anytime there's a vacancy, if someone retires or leaves office for whatever reason, the city will hold a special election to replace that person, and that will be ranked choice voting. Also, when we have primary elections, like the one that we're having in June of this year, those kinds of elections will also use ranked choice voting. We will not use them in general elections in November. In terms of the actual positions that we're going to be voting for, that will be ranked choice voting: mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, and city council. My colleague Rodine explained a bit about those positions, and they are coming up on the ballot for us to vote for in June. And so those are going to be the offices that we vote for with ranked choice voting. This is not something that we use for president, for governor, for Congress, for state Senate or US Senate. This is not for any of those federal or state offices. Also, if you live in Manhattan or Brooklyn this year, you may have a district attorney race. Those are not ranked choice voting. A district attorney and judges are still being voted for in the single choice way, where you can only pick one. So how is this going to affect you? How does it work? I'm going to explain a little bit, starting with how do you fill out your ballot? So if you look at on the screen here, I have an example for you of what the ballot will look like in terms of how it will look. So for those that are on the phone or are visually impaired, it is the list of candidates is on the left side of this grid. And then next to the list of candidates, there are 5 columns representing first, second, third, fourth, and fifth choice. And next to each candidate's names, there's a bubble for each column. So what you do is, whoever your first choice candidate is, you'll go next to their name and you'll fill in the first column next to their name. You'll fill in the bubble in the first column for their name. In this example, this person filled in candidate B as their first choice. And if you only like one person and only want to vote for one person, you can stop right there. However, if you have a second choice that you would like to pick, you can go into the second column and fill in the bubble next to their name, and do the same thing for your third choice, your fourth choice, and your fifth choice. You have up to 5 choices, but you don't have to use all 5. You can pick one, or you can pick up to 5, or anything in between. Those are your options. Now, this is a sample of a ballot that we had for the special election back in February. So this is the way the ballot will look when you go to vote. You will have the list of candidates, and then next to their names, you'll have the 5 columns. All the way in the bottom, you can see there is still an option to do a write-in candidate if you would like. You would fill in the person's name and then fill in the bubble for whatever rank you would like to give them. There are a couple of things that I want people to watch out for. The first thing is, do not give multiple candidates the same rank. That means you cannot have 2 number 1 options. You cannot have 2 number 2 options, or 2 number 3 options, and so on. That would be considered an invalid ballot, and your vote wouldn't count in that case because the ballot scanner would not be able to tell who you actually wanted to vote for or who you wanted to rank for that position. So only 1 rank per candidate. Also, the second thing to watch out for is do not rank a candidate more than once. So down here on the bottom, I have an example of someone that really likes this person, and they ranked candidate B 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They must really like this person, but that doesn't help the candidate anymore. It counts, it does count as a vote. It's 1 single vote, but you're not making your vote any stronger or more powerful, any more for that candidate. It's a regular vote for 1 person. The issue with this, or the problem and why we don't recommend it, is you're wasting your opportunity to use your other 2nd, 3rd, 4th options. So just moving to, once everyone has cast their ballot and the Board of Elections has counted up all the votes, then we'll get into what the tabulation process is. And what that means is we have all votes, all first choices, everyone's first choice. So that means if you voted early, if you voted by mail, if you voted on election day, all votes will be counted. And once that happens, if someone has a majority, more than 50%, then they are declared the winner. For example, I'm showing here an example where candidate B has 54% after all the first choice votes are counted. That person would be declared the winner and the election would be over. This happens around half the time. So around half the time, somebody wins in the first round. But the rest of the time, it looks more like this. So this time, candidate B does have the most votes, but they only have 39%. That's not a majority. So here's where we would start counting in rounds, and everyone's 2nd and 3rd choices would start coming into play and would become a factor. So what we do at this point and what's going to happen is the candidate with the fewest votes will be eliminated. So in this example here, candidate D has the fewest votes. They only have 12%. That's the lowest percentage or the lowest number of votes. So what would happen to all of those votes is everyone that voted for candidate D would have their vote moved to their next highest choice. So on the left is an example of somebody that voted for candidate D. Their next highest choice is candidate C, who is their 2nd choice. So what happens is now their vote goes to candidate C. That is 1 person, but that same process happens for everyone that voted for candidate D. And so everyone's vote gets moved over to the other candidates. Everyone who voted for candidate D has their vote shifted over between the other candidates. If you voted for A, B, or C first, then your vote stays with them. This only changes the candidate who is being eliminated. So now all of those votes from candidate D have been shifted over. You can see the numbers are changed. Candidate A went from 27 to 31, B went from 39 to 45, and C went from 22 to 24. So the votes were redistributed, but it wasn't an even split. It was based on whoever had the most second choices from those votes that were moved. This continues. It would continue until you have the final two candidates. So now the same thing happens with candidate C. They get eliminated, and everyone that voted for them goes to their next highest choice. So they get moved over to either A or B, depending on who they picked as their next highest choice. And what happens is once those votes are redistributed, someone is going to have a majority. So now candidate B has, once it's down to just A and B, candidate B has the majority, which is 58%. So just to be clear, this time, the person who was ahead or who had the most votes in the beginning, in the first round, candidate B, they did win, but that doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes someone can win from behind. The majority of ranked choice voting elections, the person who was ahead after the first round stays ahead and does win, but it doesn't always happen that way. So there are come from behind victories as well. And so I'm just going to leave with some main takeaways before we wrap up. The main takeaways for voters: you can rank up to 5 candidates, but you do not need you do not need to use all 5. If you rank 5 candidates, you don't have 5 votes. You always only have 1 active vote. Your vote just moves if your top candidate is eliminated. And your vote would move from your top candidate, if they are eliminated, to your next highest choice. If you prefer, you can still vote for just your first choice candidate, but having a second or third or fourth or fifth candidate does not harm your first choice. Your vote stays with your first choice, and it only moves if they are eliminated. By ranking multiple candidates, you get to impact who gets elected, even if your top choice doesn't win. Ranking multiple candidates ensures your vote will go towards your second, third, fourth, or fifth choice if your top choice is eliminated, giving you more say in who wins. The key point is that you want to have options. You want to have a backup option. If your top choice, the way I like to explain it for voters is your number one choice is the candidate that you love, that you really, really, really want to win. Your second or third choice is someone that you're okay with, that you like, but maybe they're not your favorite. And your fourth or fifth choice is somebody that you can live with. By the time you get to that point, you just want to have somebody that you can live with versus a candidate that maybe you really do not want to win. And one of the last things I'm going to leave you with in terms of timing, how long we can expect the results to take, about 2 to 3 weeks. And the reason for that is the Board of Elections does need to count every single vote before they can do the tabulation process. And that means that they have to wait for all of the votes to come in from the mail. And that can take several days after Election Day. So they may have to wait up to a week or maybe 10 days after Election Day to receive every single ballot. And then once they count up every ballot and every first choice, then they can decide if there's a winner or if they need to go to tabulation. The tabulation doesn't take as long. It's counting every ballot. So we think it may take 2 or 3 weeks after Election Day for some elections to have a final result. And just to leave you with some of the reasons that you as a voter should use your options. These are some of the ways that ranked choice voting can benefit you as a voter and why you should take advantage of it. You have, number one, you have more of a say in who gets elected, as I have been emphasizing. if your first choice does not win, you want to have a backup option. Many times you may like a candidate a lot, or you may really want someone to win, but it doesn't mean that they're always going to win. They may not have much support, or they may not have as many resources or as much popularity or name recognition. But you still want to be able to vote for them first. And then if they don't make it and they are eliminated, you still have a backup option. And you have a second choice and a third choice and a fourth choice, so that even as the election moves on, you're always able to impact, you're able to impact the final outcome in as many ways as you can. Number two, candidates are more likely to appeal to a wider audience. We have seen this in other places where candidates begin to appeal to other communities and other voting blocks besides their own, because they want to be voters' second choice, even if they're not their first choice. Now, the way that the system worked before, very often, if you were not voting for a candidate, they would ignore you. And so now candidates have more incentive to talk to voters and try to persuade them to at least consider them as a second option. And then number three, voters have elected more diverse candidates where there has been ranked choice voting. It's one of the things that we've seen, not only in terms of race and ethnicity, where voters will select more more candidates who are people of color, but also in terms of gender and seeing more women candidates elected, for example. And so it's something that we've seen and is important to New York City voters as well. And just the next steps, well, Rodine covered some of this, but I will just reiterate, on June 22nd, we have the citywide primary. And once again, we do have early voting. And so we want to make sure people take advantage of early voting if they can. That's going to be from June 12th to June 20th. And we will be electing a new mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough presidents, and the 51 city council races. I'm going to leave some links with you. I know these are not the most pleasant looking links to look at, but we will share copies of the slides for everyone so that you can click on these links. And the first place is to look at is voting.nyc. At that website, you can get your poll site information. You can get information about how to receive your absentee ballot. You can get election dates and early voting dates. And you can also access our voter guide there, which will be available on June 1st. And we also have a page with additional educational resources for ranked choice voting. We have a ranked choice voting training schedule. And we also have a video that explains ranked choice voting that is available in English, Chinese, Spanish, Korean, and Bengali. And finally, on social media, you can find us at NYC Votes. I'll leave my contact information, and thank you all very much. I'll take my screen off and see if we have any questions. Okay, so we do have a question, which I'm happy to answer. The question, will the voting machine tell me if I make a mistake on my ballot? Yes. So if you're voting in person and you make one of the mistakes that we identified during the presentation, the ballot scanner will tell you that there's a mistake on there, and you can correct it. We want to be very careful to tell people if you're voting by mail, there's no way to correct that error because once the Board of Elections takes your ballot out of the sleeve, then there's no way to know whose ballot that belonged to. So it will be considered invalid. So the machine will tell you if you make an error. If you're voting in person, you are able to correct it. If you're voting by mail, there won't be a way to correct it other than going and voting in person. So this is something that people don't actually know, or most people don't know. But so if you submit a mail ballot, an absentee ballot, you can actually, and you decide to change your mind maybe, or you realize like, hey, I made a mistake on my ballot. You can go, you have up until the 8:59 p.m. on election day to go and vote in person. So you can either vote early or vote on election day. And that vote that's in person will supersede your mail vote. So, you know, it's just as a, you know, in case that does happen and you get a mail ballot and you submit it, and then you decide you actually found out something about the candidate and, you know, you changed your mind, you can vote in person, and that in-person vote will take priority. Okay, I think I see we have one more question here about how do I vote for a write-in candidate? So there's on the ballot, I think I showed an example of this. At the bottom of the list, there's a write-in option, so you can fill in the person that you want to vote for. And then you just fill in the bubble for whatever option you want them as. Rodine, do you want to take this question? Do you still have to be registered to a party to vote in that party's primary?
Sure. So yes, you do have to be registered to a party in order to vote in that party's primary. New York State is still a closed primary state. And also for those of you that were thinking about changing parties, unfortunately, the deadline has passed. But if you are a new register and you haven't registered yet, you have until May 28th to sign up to vote and to register to a party. And if you do want to just change your address and fill out a new form, you have until June 2nd to do that.
Very important. That was a very important distinction, the dates. So the vote, again, I'll just repeat, the voter registration, the deadline, if you're not registered to vote, the deadline to register is May 28th. If you wanted to change your party, that deadline has passed already. It was in February. But if you are a new voter and you're not registered, you can register by May 28th and be able to vote in the primary. We have another question, which is, do you see any disadvantages to ranked choice voting? I mean, that's a good question. I'm not sure what I would consider a rank disadvantage. I would say one thing that it does create that's different is now voters, and, you know, I include myself in that, we have to do a little bit more research, you know, because now if we're asked to rank 5 candidates. For example, there are 13 candidates on the ballot for mayor in the Democratic primary. There are less than that in the Republican, but let's say, for example, if you have to decide between 13 candidates, for example, you know, that's a lot of people to do research on. And usually we would only have to pick one. And so once you find the person that's for you, you can just stick with them. But now if you have 5 that you can rank, there is a little bit more homework that you have to do in terms of, you know, who do I really like? Who could I have as a backup option? Who can I have as a third option, and so on. So there's there's a little bit more homework that needs to be done by candidates. Rodine, do you want to take this next question?
That would be the 50%.
So so we have a question here. In 50% of elections, there is a clear winner. In the other 50%, it goes to the next round. How often does it go to a third or fourth round? So I can actually explain this. In New York, the way that they passed it it always has to go down to the final two. So if there's 10 candidates, it'll go 9 rounds. And, if there's 13 candidates, it'll go 12 rounds. It always goes down until you get to the final two. So once they start the tabulation, they will continue until the final two.
Okay. And then the next question is, so ranked voting applies to primary elections. Yes, it'll be primary elections and special elections for local elections. So like Omar said before, the governor's race, state senate, federal elections, you will not see ranked choice voting, just the primaries to the local elections. And during special elections.
Okay. You need a reason to vote by mail. Actually, so we just got an update on this. The short answer is that this year everyone is eligible to use COVID-19 as the reason to request a mail ballot. So far, New York has not changed its overall rules in terms of no excuse being needed. But for this year, everyone is eligible to use COVID-19 as an excuse for getting a mail ballot. Okay. And let's see, I think we got through most of the
There's
questions
one
here.
more. What if there aren't 5 candidates running for office? So I think we can both give answers to that, but if there's not 5 candidates running for office, that's okay. In some districts, you may see there's only 2 or 3 or 4 people, then you would rank your top 2, 3, 4 choices, right? So all it's saying is that you get up to 5 if there's over 5 candidates. But if there's not, then you choose between the candidates that are there and listed.
100%. That's the case. Same thing goes if there are more than 5 candidates. You still only have up to 5 as a max. So 5 is the maximum. You can still pick 1, or you can pick anything in between that. And so I think we've answered all the questions. I want to give you a chance, Rodine, if you want to give any closing remarks before we finish up.
Thank you. The closing remarks that I have is what I usually tell everyone is that I know last year, there was a big deal made about the presidential elections, but this year is super important. We have over 30 open seats. There's 300 plus people running. So really do your education. Like Omar said, look up the candidates who are running and figure out who's the best option for you. A lot of the times, we go back and vote for the same people, but with so many options, you want to figure out whose platform aligns with what you believe in, right? And really go out and vote. These local elections matter in the most minuscule ways that we don't think about, from garbage collections to our everyday lives, the annoying things we think about when we're on our way to work or church, things like that. So really get involved, do your research, and then also all the information you learn, pass it on to your family and friends, because we're always the ones that tend to come here and get this information and our families aren't. So spread the word, let them know everything you learned, and you'll also be getting a copy of this stuff so you can help pass that as well. Thank you all for sitting here with us and getting the information.
Okay, thank you. I think you said it all. I was going to mention the same thing, is please go out and be a messenger, in your community, in your network. And once you get the information from us, you'll receive the slides in English as well as in traditional Chinese for those that have been listening in Cantonese and Mandarin. And, please spread the word, please spread the message. and have a wonderful evening. Thank you all.
I believe Lester had a question or a comment.
Oh. Has a hand up.
Yes, I'm just let everybody know have experience in as a poll site coordinator for over 30 years. And I encourage for those who vote absenteeism or by mail, go to the poll site, even early election, and have your ballot scanned by a machine to avoid errors. If you mail it or send it by absentee ballot, there's no way, if there's an error, there's no way anyone can correct it. So the best way to do is take your ballot and don't have to wait online, just have it scanned. If you have a ballot, an absentee ballot, go to the machine and scan it, they'll pick up the errors. If not, then the Board of Election will invalidate if there is an error. That's what I encourage. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lester. That's a great point. If you have an absentee ballot, you can submit it in person at any poll site or any Board of Elections office. And if there's nothing else, we just got some thank yous on the presentation. I think we'll close out here and wish everyone a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone.